on the surface, looks very calm, methodical. Okay, right, let's just get back to work. And that's what he needs to do. There's no point getting frustrated or angry. Just keep calm, take the emotion out of your racing, and get going on your charge.
He's on the back of Lewis Goodway at the moment in the number 74 Porsche. Graham Hill Bend, you can see how wide they swing out, trying to maximise the track limits on the exit of that corner, carrying the speed all the way through the latter portion of the lap here. But I get the feeling Peter Berryman's being held up a little bit here. They're still yet to try and find the way through. Of course, the main plan of action is to get a run out of Paddock Hill Bend and getting the move done on the brakes into Druids, but hasn't been successful in doing that so far. Let's see if he gets that good run down the hill, and he does, and Lewis Goodway pulls to the inside to try and defend the line, but Lewis Goodway's outbroke himself, and now Peter Berryman can sneak his way down the inside, not quite clear by the exit of the corner. The battle will have to be taken to Graham Hill Bend as well, but look at the speed around the outside that Peter Berryman is able to carry against the position.
Yeah, that was beautifully set up by Pete. Put Lewis under pressure into Druids. Lewis was so busy defending. I was about to say that he was doing exactly what he needed to do into Druids, just get pulled over to the right hand side of the track, defend that place. But look at how much ground there actually was. The two in front, which is Wilton and Bertha, and also Colin Wern. So those two are battling, and those two starting to fight is actually going to bring them towards Pete now in all of this. So battling all the way through the field right now. The closest battle is this one on screen.
That is the case. Conan Wern and Will Tregurtha. Of course, Will Tregurtha, no stranger to racing, both on iRacing and, of course, in the real world, especially. Completely messes up the final corner there, Clark Curve, and Tregurtha. Now, Peter Berryman's trying to run the water as well. GT4 champion as well, so definitely good to see him making moves forward, to Peter up in position. I remember when Will was racing in the juniors way back when as well, so it's great to see him come on leaps and bounds since then, and he sort of does what we're seeing a lot of professional drivers do now, which is supplement their real life racing with the sim racing competitions as well. And it's not just sim racing just to keep their skills sharp, it's sim racing for the competitions that happen on sim racing as well, in terms of things like prize money, sponsorship, etc., etc. It's just another avenue of income that they can use to supplement their careers.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to look at one of the other series that we show on Race Spot. We've got a few of the British touring car grid are competing in that series on the Thursday night, but definitely it's great to see that you can transfer those skills. Some get it better than others, and certainly it's great to see that. But then, speaking of great to see, now Will Tregurtha is actually feeling the need to try and break the slipstream down the start and finish straight.
Yeah, there's not much you can do though when you have someone as skillful as Peter Berryman in this Porsche. So it's going to be a very tough job for Tregurtha to try and hold on to this one. He's taking all sorts of defensive lines coming into Graham Hill Bend, and now Berryman basically right on the rear bumper of that Porsche, that Williams Esports Porsche ahead of him, into the final couple of corners of the lap then, and Berryman sizing up the move. Tregurtha gets the better run off Clark Curve, so this won't happen into Paddock Hill. But I think Peter Berryman has sort of a rehearsed move here at the moment. It's get that run out of Paddock Hill Bend, even if he get the switch back off of Druids and then complete the move on the outside of Graham Hill Bend, and that seems to be the option. Maybe it's the bumper's the option this time around, as he cracks open the inside, and now watch him trying to fly around the outside of Graham Hill Bend. But Tregurtha's positioned his car very well through the entry to that corner to prevent that from happening.
and also parked the car on the apex of Graham Hill Bend so that Peter could not get the switch back there. I don't think Peter would have intended for there to be a little bit of contact, but there was nonetheless, and that's a good run. Pete got such a better run through Clark Curve, gets to the inside, he's going to squeeze Will now into Paddock Hill Bend, and that's the position. Can Will get the cutback?
Not available. Carried a little bit too much speed on entry, wasn't able to get up underneath and get the drive off. So that's a position gained by Peter Berryman. Next car down the road is about 5, 6, 7 seconds down the road, so that's going to be a little bit more tricky for Berryman to deal with, and he might even be pulling this train along with him as well. So we'll watch and see if there's any progress on that front. Jugurtha just wheeling it in towards McLaren there. That was a really sideways moment, but able to gather it up and continue pressing on. Having a look towards the front, it is Carroll and Job that are still leading this one in the Oracle Red Bull Racing Esports cars, but ever since that gap closed up by about 4 or 5 tenths of a second about 20 minutes ago, Job hasn't been able to eat into Carroll's leads, if any, at this moment, and Ellis Jr. is not able to quite close in himself either. So this looks like it's in a bit of a stalemate at the moment at the very front.
I tell you what, the Kevin Ellis Jr., I'm just, fortunately with my timing screen that I've got sight of, I can see the average lap times for the last 5 laps, and Kevin Ellis Jr. has been just like hundredths of a second faster per lap on average compared to the two in front. But right now, this is just an incredible psychological battle to a degree as well, because you're pushing as hard as you can around here, you're pushing to the absolute limit, but it's an old school track, so you get one wheel wrong and before you know it, you're into the wall. So you've really got to be careful around here. So easy to run wide through the exit of the Clark Curve because it starts off camber, the car wants to push wide, and then as it dips down it grips up and sends you through the Jack Brabham straight. But definitely these guys at the front, they've gapped out Jack Sedgwick by that couple of seconds behind him. So yeah, these drivers are just on the edge. It's a big battle just to keep at that limit.
That does seem to be the case. I'm not entirely sure whether this will be able to swap around by the time the end of the race arrives, but I am going to look back further through the field. You've got Blair Band from P8, Josh Poulan P9 at the moment. I think we had Poulan have a slight problem just a couple of moments ago that caused him to lose one of those positions there, but continuing to try and press on in this one. There he is, out there trying to lock onto the back of Blair Band, but not quite close enough to be able to make any moves just yet at this point. We've got 8.5 minutes to go, and well, things have settled down quite nicely, haven't they?
We saw this last time out though, didn't we? That things were relatively calm in the first race, and then sort of last 5 minutes business picked up. But I don't think that's going to be quite the case around here because the slipstream isn't as strong here. So I think the front two, I mean Sebastian, even though he's in second place, he'll be still wanting to get maximum points if he can. Just the one thing that he won't want to do is wipe out his teammate for the car in front. So it's the 21 and the one that we're on board with, and Kevin Ellis Jr. He's just loitering with intent, but he's not really getting close enough to make any moves at the moment. He's just there or thereabouts.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. And, well, you can see the gap now has come down between the race leaders. So that's Carroll and Job. They've broken the half-a-second mark in terms of gap. So Job certainly looking to try and press on and potentially take this race win. But how aggressive does he get with his teammate here? You know, it's the age-old question, isn't it, Paul? Do you decide to fight your teammate? Do you decide to just sort of take the easy one to finish and know you're finishing ahead of the rest of your competitors? You know, what are the options here?
I think if you're Sebastian, you think the long game and think, well, at the moment I'm guaranteed second place points. I've also got the fastest lap of the race, so that's going to help me out a little bit here. Yeah, Graham Carroll got the point for pole position and he's going to be getting a race win potentially here. So you play the percentages and you try and think the long game in this, because one bad result, as Pete Berriman is going to find out, I think, after this week. It can really affect your championship and make it a real slog.
Could be. Could well be. We'll see what happens then with regards to these two. And of course, this whole situation also depends on how close Kevin Ellis Jr. can get to the back of them, because if he starts to become a little bit more of a threat there in third place, then Joe would be a little less willing, I believe, to cause his teammate a bit of a problem, and he'll be more focused on trying to keep Ellis Jr. behind him rather than trying to get one done over his teammate. And like you said, Ellis Jr. has been marginally faster over the course of this race. As we're looking back at the battle for P14, Lewis Goodway and Conan Byrne. Conan Byrne getting all sorts of out of shape on the entry. He's able to recover it for the exit and is able to find himself down the inside at Druids. They'll have a bit of an overlap on the exit of the corner. Goodway trying to fight it out on the inside through Graham Hill Bends. Typically in the car, the outside has had a better run due to the runoff on the outside of the curb, and that's exactly what has happened there with Conor being able to gain that position.
We can tell that the scan was done before Jonathan Palmer got his pressure plates down for the track limits there at the exit of Graham Hill Bend, because you basically put two wheels off of the curb on the exit of Graham Hill Bend and you get a track limits violation in the real world. So obviously iRacing giving a little bit of leeway on the track limits. I can't say I completely agree, if I'm honest, but then again, you know my thoughts on track limits. This is a good battle for 17th. We're saying about the battles at the front, but don't forget that there's a battling further down as well. And yes, this isn't for points right now, but it's for pride and it's for a starting position as well. Daniel McDonald and Brandon Blakesley in that Vulcan Sim Racing, striking livery, that Vulcan Sim Racing.
Look absolutely fantastic. I think we've used our allotted discussion time for liveries on round number 1 though, so we won't go too deep into it at the moment. But battle for 17th raging on. You can see in the bottom right hand side there's the battle for first, or rather the group of 3 that currently lead this race as well. I'll say they're not battling quite just yet, as 71 draws up on the brakes through Druids up to the back of Daniel McDonald in the 73. But again, no changes there just yet. Remember, of course, this is just race number 1 today. We do have a second race after a 5-minute break at the end of this one, and that grid will be set based on the reverse grid of the top 6. So currently, Will Chadwick will be reverse grid pole position sitter for race number 2, and he's in a comfortable bit of no man's land at the moment. No one really to focus on ahead, no one to challenge from behind. So Chadwick is looking pretty good for that reverse grid pole.
Yeah, he's just going to keep it on the track, which is easier said than done. But you can see him, he's waltzing off into the distance in front of this battle between Moon and Blair. No, not Moon. This is Blair Mann and Josh Poulin, who are still fighting it out. And the Pure Sims driver, Blair Mann, hanging on to this 8th place for the moment, doing a sterling effort right now. But Josh is running out of time here. We've got about 5 laps remaining in this race. These drivers now, they need, if they're in a position to make some moves, they need to make the move.
Yeah, it's getting towards crunch time now, isn't it? It's either now or never, and that sort of attitude can fester a little bit sometimes, and drivers will drive beyond their means, but hopefully these two are able to keep themselves calm and have a good fight at the end of this one for key number 8 out on circuit. So Blair Mann and Josh Poulin are the 2 drivers that we're looking at the moment. Of course, we will keep half an eye on what's going on further up the field with those race leaders to see whether Sebastian Job does decide to get himself aggressive with his teammates. So they are on the way up in towards Druids, and yeah, every time I look at this, I'm seeing the cars get sort of more squished up together. Kevin Ellis Jr. is now within a second of Job, so this I don't think we quite have the laps left for this to really spark a battle in terms of this top 3, but we're pretty close.
I don't think that Job will even make a move, because this guy right here, the young Scotsman, Kevin Ellis Jr., currently racing at the Apex Racing Team facility down in Corby, and he is on a bit of a light push here, and Sebastian, he won't make a move now. He'll try and hold on.
What happened to Blair Mann? Did he make a mistake through the final corner? I think he did. So that was the battle that we were watching between him and Josh Poulan. So Poulan's able to get himself through. So was M.Emery as well. So Emery was able to gain the position on that mistake from Blair Mann through the final corner of Clark Curve here at this Brands Hatch Indy circuit. Have a look at the replay. Back end just sliding out, didn't want to comply, and well, he only had one option there, and that was just to aim for the runoff, aim for the grass and the gravel on the outside there. He's able to rejoin the circuit in safe fashion though. 1 minute left to go. The top three as close as ever. But like you said, Paul, Job, I don't think the focus is on the race win anymore. The focus is on keeping Els Jr. behind.
It certainly is, and just to go back to Blair Mann, he hit that bump that Will Chadwick warned us about on his track guide through McLaren. These three, they are closer than ever. In fact, I can tell you that Josh Poulan now has dropped down to 10th place. So mistakes galore out there, but we haven't really got time to look at that because this lead battle is reaching the final lap of the race.
It is heading their way through Clark Curve now. They'll come up across the line. This will be the start of the final lap of race number 1 at Brands Hatch Indy for the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain. It was all excitement at the very start of the race, especially for these front few positions, but ever since then they've just been working on trying to close up to each other. They've gotten as close as they dare through this final lap, but I think if there's going to be any action, it will be from Els Jr. behind, but with a slightly sloppy Druids corner, it does limit his opportunities coming into the back end of the lap here. Those two Red Bull Racing Esports, those Oracle Red Bull Racing Esports cars at the very front should be clear to the checkered flag. Graham Carroll with a very well-run race. He'll head his way out of the final corner now of Clark up across the start-finish line, and he will take the race win for race number 1 at Brands Hatch for the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain. Round number 3 of the championship, of course, goes to Graham Carroll. Sebastian Job with a very respectable second place, however, but that contact between himself and Peter Berryman in the early portions of race 1 here, Paul, that will be investigated by the stewards after the event.
Yeah, post-race stewarding in this series, so yeah, they'll have a look at that one and see if there's any sort of penalty needs to be handed out there. It is a tricky one in my opinion because it is coming downhill and the track does curve around there as well. It's not going to be an easy one for the stewards, but yeah, what a drive from Graham Carroll. Lights to flag at the front.
Here are your unofficial race results pending stewards review. It's Graham Carroll race win here for the first race at Brands Hatch. Then you've got Sebastian Job P2. Then Kevin Els Jr. P3 doing his best but not quite able to get close enough to pull off the pass at the very end. We've got Jack Sedgwick with a very respectable P4. Josh Thompson P5 with William Chadwick P6. That means that Team Fordzilla number 88 will start on pole position for race number 2. Jamie Moon P7 and Matt Emery will finish in P8. Blair Mann P9. Josh Poulan rounds out the top 10 at the end of race 1. We've got Leon Penn in P11 with Peter Berryman recovering up to P12. Let's see how much further he can get up through the field in race 2. Will Tragertha P13 with Conan Werner in P14 with Lewis Goodway P15. Daniel McCauley P16. Daniel McDonald P17. Brandon Blakesley. Daniel Thomas. Craig Williams rounds out the top 20. And then the rest of the cars, the 4 at the very back, Lewis Ward with John Derrick, Adam Brown and Michael Whittle rounding out the 24 car finishing results for race number 1. But you don't want to go away. We have a second race coming up for you with that reverse grid being in effect as well, with Will Chadwick from Team Fordzilla on pole position. It's going to add a bit of a different dynamic to this second race. At Silverstone, it didn't really change that much, considering that there's ample overtaking opportunities at the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. Here, though, like you said in that first race, it is trickier to overtake, so therefore that benefiting from that reverse grid is so much more valuable.
Be a good idea if I switch my microphone back on. Yeah, it's absolutely. It's going to be such a tricky thing to do there for those drivers out there. I think Pete Berryman showed how difficult it can be to overtake around here. If you've got somebody in front of you who knows how to position the car around this track, it can be near enough impossible to make a move around here. But one little mistake is all it takes. We saw that with a couple of people out there today, and you can lose positions like nobody's business. But yeah, definitely Will Chadwick has got a tremendous opportunity from pole position to get himself some really good points.
Maybe not the race win, but like you said, good points on offer. There's the little bit of carnage on the way down in towards turn number 1 for the first time, involving those drivers at the very back. There's the controversial contact, though, the little bit of door-to-door contact that sent Peter Berryman out into the grass and, well, triggered a recovery drive. There's Craig Williams out into the gravel after contact with a Pure Sims driver on the inside of Paddock Hill Bend. And well, ever since then, it was more the focus on the mid-pack with how they're able to fight in and amongst each other in this one, Paul.
Yeah, it was, and there you see the Will Tregertha battle that went on. That was certainly tremendous to watch, and certainly provided some great entertainment through the mid-pack. You can see how they were going 3 wide. That was it was a bit of a nail-biting moment, was that one, between the drivers, and yet they were all still able to keep it on. There goes the Craig setup shop car of the 97 of Lewis Ward. There's a little mistake that allowed Pete Berryman the opportunity to look down the inside into Druids and then hold that line around the outside of Graham Hill Bend to get the position over Lewis Ward. And there's Berryman then on the 12 as well. Conan Wern, again, looking at a very familiar move that he made, but he'll need to do more of that, and to be honest, Peter Berryman will want to get those moves and overtakes done at the very start of the race.
There's the little bit of contact with Will Tregertha as well, so Peter Berryman featuring quite heavily here in race number 1 as he tried to find his way through the field back into a slightly more respectable finishing position. There's the pass being done on Will Tregertha eventually. Tregertha did pull up a very, very good fight, though, then this will be a positive for those beneficiaries of the reverse grid, knowing that they can keep a much faster car behind them. But towards the end of this race, it was more the battle for just inside of the top 10 between a good couple of drivers that were looking to try and just gain that couple more points in the bag. The likes of M.Emery, Blair Mann, Josh Poulan, having those little fights there. Look at this sideways moment here, and well, just about able to keep it from going into the barriers. And across the line with Graham Carroll taking the race win, with Sebastian Job second place. 1-2 for Red Bull Racing Esports in race number 1. But we will, of course, get ourselves our starting grid for race number 2 up on your screen in just a handful of moments. Of course, reverse grid is in effect here. The top 6 will start basically the other way around, if you're unfamiliar with how reverse grids work here in motorsports. But this is a great opportunity for Will Chadwick to be able to get himself a good finish here. And of course, Josh Thompson and Jack Sedgwick as well as the other beneficiaries from the reverse grid that aren't called Apex or Red Bull.
Yeah, certainly it'll be a tremendous opportunity for those at the front of the grid here in the second race. Well, Connery, I know we've got a grid to go through, and I'm sure that Hugo will bring up the graphic on screen for you to go through the grid, but certainly, I can't wait for the second race.
Yep, I can't wait either. Here we go. There's the starting grid for race number 2 at Brands Hatch Indy. William Chadwick pole position with Josh Thompson P2, Jack Sedgwick for NX in P3, and then you have Kevin Ellis Jr. P4. Sebastian Job and Graham Cowell, they will occupy row number 3 of the starting grid. For Red Bull Racing Esports, we've got Jamie Moon from Team 75 by SimRC in P7, Matt Emery from Delta Sport in P8, Blair Mann in P9 with Josh Poulan in P10, Leon Penn P11 with Peter Berryman starting in P12 for Apex Racing Team. Williams Esports' Will Tregertha will start in 13th with Conan Wern in P14 with Lewis Goodway P15. Daniel McCauley starting 16th, Daniel McDonald 17th, and Brandon Blakely starting in 18th for race 2 with Daniel Thomas P19. Craig Williams starts in 20th with Lewis Ward P21st. We've got And we've got John Derrick for P22. Adam Brown starts P23 with Michael Weddle starting in 24th. It's an all Rethink Racing final row of the starting grids as we head into our second race of the day with the gridding procedure underway. Well, first race, of course, it had a lot of action in the opening couple of laps, especially amongst those top couple of cars. I get the feeling the pressure will be a little bit more here in race number 2, especially considering that the likes of Ellis Jr., Job and Carroll need to work their way through these beneficiaries of the reverse grid as quickly as possible.
Yeah, certainly. It's going to be who can take advantage, who can get a good launch. We've seen how you can get a good launch out of this car, or you can even get a bad launch out of this car as well. You can really overheat the clutch and just end up dragging it down at the start line. So definitely going to be tricky to get going. Pole position isn't always the best place to start from because you're right in a dip. Second place traditionally around this track is actually the place that you want to start from. It's amazing how in the real world drivers will try and not get pole position but get second.
Yeah, that can be a thing, but cannot confirm nor deny whether that's the strategy for these drivers out here today as well. As soon we'll get ourselves the countdown going and race number 2 underway from Brands Hatch Indy and the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain. Race number 1 was an interesting affair, but what does race number 2 hold here at Brands Hatch? We're about to go racing for the second time at the Indy circuit. The engine notes rise and they pull off the starting grid. What a launch from Josh Thompson from second place on the starting grid. He'll be able to challenge around the outside on your pole position instead of Will Chadwick. And, well, Will Chadwick try and fight things back on the inside here. He'll have the preferred line coming in towards Druids. Late on the brakes goes Josh Thompson, though. It's a titanic battle for P1 here in the early stages as there's the squeeze given by Will as that Team Fordzilla car looking pretty wide as Thompson sends it down the inside of Graham Hill Bend, forces Chadwick wide out onto the grass, loses positions as Thompson leads now, but Kevin Ellis Jr. benefits up into second.
And Jack Sedgwick had an awful start, dropped down to 7th place, even on to turn number 1. That's a bit of a slide from Sebastian Job behind Kevin Ellis Jr. Ellis Jr., he'll be determined to try and get past Josh Thompson, but we just saw on that first lap how much of a robust defender Josh is. He squeezed Will Chadwick completely off the track.
Yeah, he did. The stewards will be looking at that after the race, of course. Will is still involved in battles, by the way. He was trying to head his way down around the outside of Jamie Moon there, but finding no success. He's fallen back into the same postcode as Jack Sedgwick, who had a poor start, like you said, as well back there. So not an ideal situation for Chadwick. He's back into 6th place, which is exactly where he started exactly where he finished for race number 1. So not all that much change there, but still involved in this train most importantly, and doesn't look to have any significant damage to the car either. So at least you can look at the silver lining there. But yeah, pretty crazy start here, and we've still got Josh Thompson leading, and like you said, Paul, Thompson is not afraid to get the elbows out, no matter who it is trying to pass him. So this might be a tricky predicament for Ellis Jr., Job and Carroll.
Yeah, I mean, Josh, he is a Porsche Carrera Esports Super Cup driver, along with Ellis Jr., Job and Carroll at the front of this, and Jack Sedgwick in 7th place. So, we've got a number of... Berryman's up to 9th already, by the way, so he's had a sterling start to this one. But yeah, these drivers, Josh Thompson in his traditional reclined position right now, and Kevin Ellis Jr., look at the speed he was carrying down into Paddock Hill Bend. Careful of your corner entry, get the line right, move over to the inside if you feel you need to defend. No, he doesn't. He feels that Kevin is staying behind for the time being, and he's got a queue of traffic behind him, and he's certainly loving being at the front.
Yeah, you couldn't read that on his face, but trust me, drivers love leading these sorts of races. But, can he lead it for the rest of the 22 minutes that we have to run? That's the important point, and it's going to come under immense pressure from Ellis Jr., Job and Carroll behind as well. Here's the onboard with Peter, it's with Kevin Ellis Jr. as he tries to hunt down P1. Of course, he can't really rush anything here. But then again, he's being pressured himself by his main championship contender of Sebastian Job behind.
Yeah, it certainly is. As they go through, yeah, Kevin, but he's calm under pressure, isn't he? As Kevin, he's got the fight for the lead to worry about, but he's also got to make sure he doesn't make a mistake, because Sebastian Job will jump onto that opportunity for his championship. So definitely, Ellis Jr. right now, one position higher up than where he finished in the first race of this one, but he'll want to go one better here, and he'll want to get to the lead. But Josh Thompson right now, certainly doing a good job at the front of your field.
He's a little altercation towards the very back of the field as John Derrick getting all sorts out of shape, and collects a couple of drivers behind as well. That was Daniel McDonald. I got a piece of that one. Who else? I'll have a look. It's Adam Brown that was involved in that too, just trying to slam on the anchors. I don't think he had a bit of contact, so he got away with one there, but that's not what you want to see, that's for sure, with the car in front completely overcooking the entry into McLaren and losing the back of the car into a bunch of traffic. Yeah,
it's a two-ness of parties in that got collected in that incident. Unfortunately, those two able to carry on. However, John Derrick is off. Here's the replay of the move for the lead then, and it's, to be fair to Josh, I think Will was carrying that much speed through Graham Hill Bend on the outside line that he was always going to run wide there, but there was no quarter given and none asked either.
Yeah, that's certainly the way I would put it, that's for sure. As you can see how closely that Ellis Jr. is pressuring Thompson for the moment. It's well, Thompson's been doing a good job to hold into this one so far, but the thing is, for Thompson, he can't put a foot wrong at the moment. Look at how closely Ellis Jr. is following him through Clark Curve. This is crazy stuff. But does Ellis Jr. decide to go for the move into Paddock Hill Bend? He's certainly going to go for the option, going around the outside, forcing Thompson to go defensive, and Thompson's overcut the middle of the corner, allows Kevin Ellis Jr. to slip his way down the inside. That was all pre-planned, I get the feeling, from Ellis Jr. Now Sebastian Job might be able to capitalize. He can't afford for Ellis Jr. to put cars in between himself and him. And, well, there we go. That's Sebastian Job up into second place. So that's good opportunistic driving for Sebastian Job. But Kevin Ellis Jr., that was a very, very smart move, forcing the car to go defensive in towards Paddock Hill Bend, taking a shallower line than they usually do, and that causes issues in the middle of the corner, and so Ellis Jr. is able to slip in underneath. Perfect.
And he knows it, doesn't he? He's shaking his head, but that is, I mean, Kevin Ellis Jr. set that up on the exit of the Clark Curve, down the Jack Brabham straight. He knew exactly what he was doing. We saw previously that Kevin Ellis Jr. could get the run on Josh Thompson down towards Paddock Hill Bend. Didn't quite do it the first time, but that last lap did it absolutely spot on. Forced Thompson into a mistake. And that's all you need to do around here. It's a real mind game, is this, and a driver's track is this, and those that can outthink their opponent are the ones that generally move towards the front of the field.
Continuing on with this one though, 18 minutes left to run, and still, well, what's the Sebastian Job do in this situation? It's try and maybe work to try and pull away from Josh Thompson just so that they have a bit of a buffer, well, Sebastian Job will just be hoping and praying that Carroll can get himself past in short order to come in and assist him in terms of this battle for the race lead. Look how deep on the brakes, he just saw it out of shot there, but Josh Thompson just slamming on the anchors in towards Druids, almost running into the back of Sebastian Job on that occasion. You can see how much he's pushing in third place, trying to keep Graham Carroll behind him, but the front two continuing on trying to work on pulling that gap. That will be so important for them.
They will, and I think you're right. I think Sebastian needs to work with Kevin at this point, not fight too hard with him, and just try and pull away naturally from Josh Thompson. Get that gap so that when you do fight, you're not going to be risking losing multiple places if you end up in the wrong place at the wrong time. Say if you're going around the outside of a corner like Druids, it gives the opportunity for those behind to sneak up the inside and put you under pressure, and before you know it, you go from attacking to defence. And so that's why you'll want to try and work together now with Kevin Ellis Jr. Try and pull that gap so that when he does make a move, he's not got the threat from behind as well.
They're trying, and well, that was a scruffy end to the lap from Sebastian Job that allows Kevin Ellis Jr. to pull out a little bit of a gap on the way down to the start-finish line. So a gap up to almost 0.4 of a second on that occasion. So Ellis Jr. will be taking those sorts of gains all day long, and you can see how much that Sebastian Job is trying to push the track limits, almost dipping 2 tyres into the gravel on the outside of Paddock Hill Bend, and that is a kind of a dangerous thing to do on occasion, because you know how the sort of off-circuit handling is here on iRacing. The car does become quite unsettled when you do that. However, if there's time to be gained out there, well, some people like taking the risk.
Yeah, they certainly do, and if it works for you and you're able to make it work, then you try and take advantage of it. But you know, we've got battles all the way through the field, and Pete Berryman actually, look at this battle. Berryman, he was in 9th place. He's actually dropped down to 10th in all of this, and contact around goes to 33. Josh Poulan is around. Was he helped? From first glance there, I think we need another look, but from first glance it just looked like the tiniest of touches under braking.
Yeah, we'll have a look in just a bit as we'll see these battles continuing on through Druids, just cycling things back. In terms of the Daniel Thomas, Craig Williams, Josh Poulan battle, this is at the moment, as that was a really high mouth moment, and Poulan taking a big trip across and into the, well, nosing the rear end into the barriers there on that occasion. I don't think there was any contact. I'm just having a look at the replay. If there was, it was the slightest bits and the slightest bit of help from Peter Berryman to get turned around, and I'm being told by a wonderful replay op that there in fact was a little bit of contact.
But the thing is, because you're on the brakes into Paddock Hill Bend, the weight transfers over to the front wheels, so the back end goes a little bit light, and before you know it, just the slightest of contact can unsettle the car. Here you go. You can see how close Berryman is, and it can just be just as simple as just getting on the brakes just that little bit later, just a fraction of a second later than the car in front, and that's exactly what happened there. So Berryman, he ends up back up into 8th place now in all of that, but again, that's something that possibly the stewards will be looking to have a look at after this event.
Yeah, and well, they might be relatively busy after this event, and well, who knows what might happen in the final 14 here as well. So here's the very front of the field. Kevin Ellis Jr. leads by 3 and almost half, well, now 0.3 of a second to Sebastian Job. Thompson still holding on to that 3rd place, by the way. Battling going on further back, we've got Josh Poulan and Craig Williams involved in all of this as well. We've got Daniel Thomas just sort of getting out of the way of everyone there at the moment. I think he might have had himself a slowdown penalty or rather a slow segment on the circuit. There's a shove to the back bumper. I'm not sure what's gone on between Thomas and Weardle, but that was a bit of a naughty move.
I think
Berryman could most likely get a penalty for that contact, so just hit your marks and
part of the track
looking good.
Just ended up into the back of him. It's tricky because you're turning and braking at the same time through that point, so it's very easy to get your braking wrong and end up into the back of them. But look at this, look at these two now. Ellis Jr. and Job have pulled out a bit of a gap over Josh Thompson and Graham Carroll. So this is what they wanted. They wanted to pull out ahead, and they're certainly doing a sterling job of it, and plenty of time left. We're only just reaching the halfway point of this race.
Yeah, this is playing into the hands of both of them. Of course, the ideal situation for... Oh, we actually might be seeing a move for P3 because Josh Thompson has made a mistake and Graham Carroll's found his way down the inside of Druins. Here comes the cutback, though, from Josh Thompson. Can he hang it around the outside of Graham Hill Bend? He's looking for the cutback off the corner, but Graham Carroll is an expert at positioning his car through there just to try and cancel out any comeback that Josh Thompson was going to be able to manage. It's still not completely done just yet, though. Thompson's still following very, very closely up towards Clark Curve, not quite getting the same sort of drive off the corner, but that was an important pass made by Graham Carroll. Now, as long as he secures this in the next couple of corners, he can focus on trying to catch the front two. But let's see what Josh Thompson does down the hill through Paddock Hill Bend. Not quite going to be there to make the move into Druins.
Thompson again, shake of the head. Now, was that a mistake? Is he shaking the head his own mistake there through Paddock Hill Bend, or was he just giving a little bit of assistance? We didn't see. But certainly he's not happy either with himself or with Graham. But either way, Graham Carroll is in front now. Thompson's going to try and put the pressure on here. But the problem with that is if you get the run into clearways and Jim Clark curve, you're then slower out of the corner. You want to get the run out of the Clark curve, down the straight in towards Paddock Hill Bend. So Thompson, he's known as one of the last of the late breakers, but that sometimes can actually go against you in races like this.
Not letting Carroll get away for the moment, that's for certain, as he follows as closely as possible through Druids. And who knows, it might be both of them that get themselves in a position where they could potentially catch up to the front two, with Carroll pulling the rest of this grouping along. But we'll just have to see. I don't think the front two have quite enough of a buffer to have any sort of extended wheel-to-wheel battle at the moment. And you know, if they do, they risk these two drivers behind becoming third parties in on that as well. Ellis Jr. and Joe would rather have the battle between themselves and have a slight advantage in terms of teammates, at least in the case of Joe, than, you know, trying to get themselves involved, other parties involved.
This is tremendous stuff. This is fantastic to watch here. And again, the action that this Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain provides is second to none, that's for sure. We saw how hard fought the championship was last season, and this season is certainly proving to be a step up yet again. And definitely these drivers are pushing to the ragged edge here. And of course, in just a month or so's time, well, in fact about a month and a half's time, we're going to have the opening round of the full metal Porsche Carrera Cup Great Britain as well. So getting ready to the start of the motorsport season.
Yeah, we are. Usually around about this time of year, things start to pick up again, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. So that's very exciting. Look at how wide that Kevin Ellis Jr. took the exit of the Graham Hill Bend there. Of course, there is the 1X, the incident point that you can pick up if you do take that corner a little bit too wide. But you can see maybe perhaps the pressure starting to be felt.
We're seeing, haven't we, time and again, Kevin Ellis Jr. can deal with pressure as well. He finished second twice last time out. He'll want to go one step better and get the win here. It was his teammate Pete Berriman who got the win in race 2 last time out at Silverstone. Ellis Jr. feeling the need to go a little bit defensive there on Sebastian. So Sebastian Job now is starting to really ramp up the pressure here. You can see his point of view. Look at how much opposite lock he put on there through Graham Hill Bend. Unfortunately, with that grass crate on the outside of the corner, you can actually use that and not pick up that off-track penalty. And thankfully for Sebastian, he was able to use that.
Yeah, that seems to be the plan of action for a lot of the drivers out there, trying to maximise the exit of Graham Hill Bend. And, well, like you said, Paul, I mean, you have opinions on that, just like I have opinions on rejoins, but there we go. They're trying to extend the track limits even on the outside of Paddock Hill Bend into the gravel as well. You can sort of hear when they're on the onboards the gravel hitting the bottom of the car. I wouldn't like to be one of the mechanics trying to deal with that afterwards, but either way, in sim racing, it's not a problem. So that's, you know, you can take those sorts of advantages, but yeah, this one's going to come down to the wire, I get the feeling. Sebastian Job, he's had good laps here and there. He's had laps where he's been locked onto the back bumper and laps where he's sort of been more adrift. He just needs to just find something a little extra in these final moments of the race to be able to get himself another race win in the series.
I just had a yellow flag come up on my track map, and it's Josh Poulin who's had an issue at Druids. So he's dropped all the way down to 22nd now, so not a good second race for Josh out of all of this. In fact, here's the replay. Thank you very much, Hugo. Looks to the inside of Craig Williams, gets it all locked up and into the gravel trap.
Yeah, that was eyes too big for your stomach there in that situation. And well, there's a famous Brundle quote that I could use in that situation, and I won't as well. So that's very similar along those lines. But ambition.
I mean, have you seen my stomach? Very big, so they've got to be very big eyes if that's the case. But yeah, certainly just got a bit ambitious there, didn't he, in lockdown?
Yeah, I'll say it. Ambition ahead of adhesion, I think, in that situation. As a wonderful reference to a very, very, very wonderful commentator. As we'll see the 71 out into the grass. That is Brandon Blakesley. Seems to have had a bit of a problem there. Down in P18. That is where he started in this race, so not a huge loss. But further back to the field, we've got ourselves the number 88, Will Chadwick, fighting it out with Jack Sedgwick and Peter Berryman. How about that? Peter Berryman looking to gain yet more positions in this event. And, well, let's see if he's successful in this one.
Yeah, Berryman's really caught up to the back of these two because they've been battling away. Chadwick and Sedgwick, they've been together all the way through this race, and now Berryman's saying, oh, there's some couple of extra places here for me. That'll be some nice juicy points. And Will Chadwick does the traditional lean into the corners. I'll have to admit I do that when I'm racing as well. Out of Druids, but it's so tricky for Jack Sedgwick to try and get past. He's an incredibly fast driver, as Jack, but it can be a little bit aggressive at times as well.
Can be, but you know, it's his defensive chops that's going to be tested here in this one, with Sedgwick close behind and a hard charging Peter Berryman looking to pick up more points on his recovery in this event. So he started P12, the Berryman. He's up into P8, and potentially P6 might be a thing that he's able to get at the end of this race. There's the front of the field, though. Sebastian Job continuing to pressure Kevin Ellis Jr. Ellis Jr. hasn't put a foot wrong just yet. That's going wide through Graham Hill Bend is all part of the plan. That's not a mistake whatsoever. And, well, these final 5 minutes are going to be pretty crucial as far as the race wins concerned.
Certainly is, you know, every second counts, as Donald Daniels used to say back in the late 80s, early 90s, and certainly they're going to make every second matter in this race, that's for sure. Sebastian Job putting the pressure on Kevin Ellis Jr., but Ellis Jr. has been able to withhold that pressure really well so far in this race and doing a sterling job at the front of the field. But Job will feel a little bit more confident now because he's got Graham Carroll behind him, and Carroll has actually dropped Josh Thompson and all of that, so down to fourth for Josh and losing that lead back.
Shame that we're running the Indy circuit here, because you'd be able to say he's doing a sterling job through Sterling's Bend, but we don't have.
They still go through Sterling's. Yeah, they're still. Oh no, not Sterling.
No.
30s, sorry.
30s. Well, I mean,
we'll save it for the final round.
Yeah, potentially, but yeah, they go for the first little part of 30s, then they switch back to McLaren. But well, for first, there was a little look. There was a half look there up and towards Druids for Sebastian Job. He's getting himself ready to potentially draw himself alongside, but it's going to be very, very tough, and it requires maybe a little bit of an error from Ellis Jr. for Job to get himself in a bit of a better position to be able to head his way through. I don't think Job will necessarily be able to manufacture this all of his own accord unless he's got something left in the tank. Maybe he saved a bit of tyre life and he's able to go hard charging in the final few laps here, as we see someone dropping down the order. Is that Conan Wern having a problem? No, it's a 41 of Danny McCauley.
Yeah, McCauley and Wern, I think, have got together by the looks of things, because Wern actually dropped down my timing screen as well. Adam Brown's taken a tour back to the pits. Maybe he's been involved in something as well at that. So battling all the way through. This is still Chadwick, Sedgwick and Berryman all together for 6th, 7th and 8th places, and Sedgwick still hasn't made the move past Chadwick. So Chadwick showing a sterling job. He'll just wish that it was at the front of the field rather than for 6th.
Here's the replay of what happened wrapped around the nose of Lewis Goodway as Conan Wernand, well, he picked up another casualty in that one in the form of Daniel McCauley. McCauley had nowhere to go really in that situation. Those cars were going to come back across the circuit whether he liked it or not, and that's just unfortunate reality of racing sometimes. Oh, Will out into the gravel, rather Cedric out into the gravel, excuse me, in that situation, and well, this might be one of the flashpoints here. If we don't get a battle for the race lead, we might just get ourselves a battle for P6.
We're into the final 2 minutes of the race as well. This is just absolutely flown by us, this one. Tremendous stuff to see, and we're going to have about 3 laps to go, and these drivers have just been absolutely at loggerheads all the way through this final 5-10 minutes of this race, and been tremendous to watch, and certainly giving us plenty of entertainment out there.
Certainly is, and well, there's the front of the field. Ellis Jr. leading this event, started in 4th place, was able to pick his way through the problems at the very front early on, with the likes of Chadwick, for example, dropping back through the order, Cedric having a poor start as well, and well, Ellis Jr. was able to pick his way through on all of those and establish a race lead, but has been followed by Sebastian Job, and now Carroll closing in from behind rather rapidly as well. But as they head their way onto the 2 laps to go mark, it's kind of weird seeing the lap time be less than a minute and still have 2 laps to go, but it is what it is. Into Druids. Job, how is he going to make this move now? He dropped off the back for a lap or so a little bit just moments ago, but now he's back poised, ready and waiting. But here comes the move from Peter Berryman on Jack Cedric. Clean move down the inside of Druids, as easy as you like.
He set that up through paddock as Berryman. That's how he's done that one so cleanly. But we're going to be starting the final lap. Job running out of opportunities at the front.
Here we go then. There's the confirmation start of the final lap then. Can Kevin Ellis Jr. hold on to this race lead to pick up a race win in the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain for the 2nd event? Race number 4. Job trying to get the drive out of Paddock Hill Bend. He almost went all the way out into the gravel, close through Druids, but that's your main opportunity at this circuit to make your way by. So I think Ellis Jr. has 1 step on the top step of the podium at the moment, unless there's tragedy in these final couple of corners. Into Sergis for the final time, flicking their way into McLaren for the final time. Here comes the run around the outside. Job trying to carry the speed up and towards Clark Corner, but I don't think he's going to get the drive off the corner. It will be Apex Racing Team's
Good job, mate.
Jr.
Good race.
that takes the race win for race 2 at Brands Hatch, round number 4.
Hopefully you can
Kevin Ellis Jr.'s
snag P8 after penalties are all sorted.
Pretty worn out there in the bottom right-hand side of your screen as well. By the way, in the battle for P6, Will Chadwick did come across.
I'll see you in Discord. I'll get some pics. Good job.
Able to hold off the hard-charging Peter Berryman. But that is it, Paul. Ellis Jr. was able to hold on for a race win.
Look at the look of relief as well from Kevin there. He was under intense pressure all the way through that race, and definitely was pushed to the ragged edge. And Matt said he's a man who can really keep a hold of his head and keep the pressure behind him, and that's exactly what he did out there. Tremendous stuff from Kevin Ellis Jr. in that 2nd race.
A well-worked race from P4 on the starting grid up into P1. That certainly helps a whole bunch in terms of the championship. Here's the unofficial race results, of course. As always, pending steward review. We've got Kevin Ellis Jr. taking the race win, Sebastian Job P2, Graham Carroll P3 here today. And well, that's there's no race win today for Sebastian Job. It goes to Graham Carroll and of course Kevin Ellis Jr. Josh Thompson P4. Fantastic to hold on to that position, of course. Jamie Moon with a very quiet race, but one that ends in a top 5 finish for Jamie Moon. Fantastic stuff. As we see William Chadwick P6, he was our reverse grid pole position sitter. We've got Peter Berryman P7, recovering as many points as he can here at Brands Hatch to keep his championship hopes alive. Jack Cedric P8 with Matt Emery P9. Blair Mann rounds out the top 10. And then down to the top 20, we've got Will Tregurtha P11. Leon